Testing 1, 2, cock, balls. The structure of secrecy.
He drank an awful damn lot. Did drugs too, but that's beside the point. He was a poet.
Well, not really. He wanted to be a poet. He wrote poems, and I read them.
They were
a load of crummy dog shit. Total dog shit. All dog shit.
They were all dog shit. When he first started, it was a typical kind of cliche writer with a drinking problem. But as the drinking got worse, he sort of then became a drinker with a writing problem. Though it turned out he did have some honest stuff. A little too honest. Couldn't really share that stuff with anybody, not without a lawyer present. And he used to talk about writing all the time. I think he talked about it a hell of a lot more than he ever did it. It was just, grueling for people. He was doing it to impress them. And the more you try to impress anyone, the less impressed they're ever going to be.
Man, was he a shit. The only artists I ever knew that were personally delightful as people were bad artists. All the good artists, they get off on whatever the hell it is that they're trying to make. And they're perfectly uninteresting. And they're usually assholes. But bad artists, man, they are absolutely fascinating. He was like that. He lived the poetry he couldn't write. Good poets write the poetry they're too afraid to live. Anyway, he was a shit poet. Interesting guy, but a dog shit poet. Had he ever been any good, he probably wouldn't have gone down the psychopath.
Blind pedophiles, do they exist? That was a question he always asked. Serious question. He said his mind would wander into a frenzy sometimes. He'd see a pretty woman. Awful thoughts. It was a sort of guilt-edged mind rape. Well, that should have scared the shit out of him. And it did. Shamed him. Pushed him to the edge. But what is the edge? Where is the edge? The only people who can really explain it, the only people who really understand it, are the ones who've gone over. He went over.
Why aren't you picking me up? Ching. He had a girlfriend once.
Italian. Crazy. She'd get pissed off.
Met her at the Crystal Pistol. At the Crystal Pistol, the odds are good. The goods are gonna be odd. But I guess it's better to make a fast nickel than a slow dime.
Came in with him one day. We'd been at the bar. It was Friday, for crying out loud. Anyway, she started in on him. On both of us, really. Drunk, always. She's right about that. I'm aware that's a shitty accent. She said another thing, too. Drunken Irishmen and their modest pricks. It was a nice little Friday, for Christ's sake. Racist little Friday after she got done with us.
But ooh, did he have it out for her, boy. One fast look could set his pecker on fire. He even liked it when she farted, for crying out loud. Said her farts were charming. Charming farts? Wonder if he wrote a poem about that. That definitely would have been a shit poem.
Racist little Friday would be a good name for a punk band.
She accused him of raping her once, too. I always thought she was lying. Not that I like accusing accusers of being liars. But hell, in this day and age, you never know. A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth even gets a chance to get its pants on. I kind of just think Papa was wearing out the carpet, you know what I mean? Just kind of got a little rough, scared her. Huh. Yeah. Anyway, she left his sorry ass.
And then the drinking got really bad. The writing stopped after that. His inhibitions fell off. Morality began to erode. He was wandering down the street one night, he told me. Bear with me here. He saw a woman changing clothes in her window. Her light was on, drapes were open, and he watched her undress. Voyeurism. He became a goddamn peeping Tom. He started canvassing the neighborhood after that. He said it excited him. The problem really wasn't so much that it happened once. Well, it's kind of a problem. In public, you get, well, you know. Anyhow, he started looking for open windows to peep through. Sheesh. My God, chihuahuas. Right? Right? Yeah. But he would hit the streets late at night, and as it got worse, his condition, he started canceling dates, rearranging work appointments, anything so that he could stay out a little bit later and a little bit longer throughout the night hours. God. And then one night, he saw a woman, and she walked out of a bar alone, and she jutted off down a dark alley. I guess he just couldn't resist. So he went off onto another dark alley and got up ahead of her, came around and hid on the other side of a dumpster. And as she was approaching, he had picked up a 2x4. And just before she got to the point where he was concealed, she turned off and went inside her apartment. Now, this should have been a blessing for everyone, most of all him, but it also energized him. It became a fantasy. And the fantasy swelled and swelled and swelled until he had to act. And always there was a step further. And then he would swear to himself he would never do it again, and he would stay in. The first time he stayed in 6 months, and then he went out, and the next time, half that, and the next time, half that. And that continued until he finally made contact. That was the beginning of a very slow, very deliberate downward spiral into madness.
Society wants to believe it can identify evil. He hurt animals as a youth, so he's definitely going to grow up and kill people. You can't predict that, unless you have an oracle, like in Minority Report. Total shit movie. My favorite movie is Short Circuit 2. Not the first one with the speed reading shit, the second one with the Indian dude. But seriously, hurting animals is bad. Don't do that shit. But you see the news doing it all the time. They try to predict this shit. If I've learned anything about the news media, it's this. You don't need to know much. Whatever they tell you to do the opposite. Do the opposite. Had he been raised in a place like the Soviet Union or Afghanistan, he would have in all likelihood led a normal life. But here in America, you kidding me? Shit. Contemporary values are more splintered than ever. The chaos of daily life is far worse than ever. You might say the Black Plague was worse, but at least with that you knew what to expect. Death. And death, we can all understand. Our version of the plague today is confusion. In a world that has more tools to communicate than ever before in the history of man, life makes less and less sense. Who understands love? Who understands banking? Who understands parenting? There are a lot worse things today. A lot of people would be better off dead. He got lost. And he started seeing a therapist, which I advised him against. I told him never to tell your problems to anyone because 80% of them don't care and the other 20% are glad you have them. Oh, shit. That turned out to be really bad advice for him, by the way. But anyway, it was all a front. He was always obsessed over what people thought. But as my grandmother used to say, in your 20s, you worry what people think about you. In your 40s, you stop caring what people think about you. And in your 60s, you realize that they weren't thinking about you at all. He finally came to me one day, frantic. Said he was afraid to do something he knew he was eventually going to have to do anyway. So I pause. Let me preface this by saying I had no clue what he was actually talking about. So I tell him that life has taught me the more that something scares you, the more likely it is you should try it. Take the plunge, get it over with. Are you fucking kidding me? Dumb idiot. But give it time and shame always comes clambering back as pride. What I said would have been great advice for somebody who had an irrational fear of germs or heights. It just happens not to be so good for somebody who's thinking about committing murder. How the hell was I supposed to know? And you can't sit around and wait for someone to make you feel better any more than you can blame them for making you feel worse. He was at war with himself. Was so every day. The urge to stalk and kill versus the urge to run and hide. And the truth is, he was addicted to that struggle. Unfortunately, there's no energy in peace. And no boredom in war.
This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. But it is perhaps the end of the beginning.